Docked along Seawolf Park, the Galveston Naval Museum stands as a solemn tribute to those who served at sea, most notably the brave souls aboard the USS Stewart and the USS Kavala. These steel giants weathered the chaos of World War II, bearing witness to battles, sacrifice, and the lives of sailors who never came home. Now at rest, the ships sit in silence. But that silence doesn't always last. Visitors and staff have reported strange sounds echoing below deck. Footsteps in empty corridors, whispers in the stale air, and voices carried on the ocean wind. Some wonder if these vessels still hold the energy of the men who fought and died within their walls, if duty ever truly ends, or if some spirits still stand watch.
We are currently on Pelican Island, and we are at the Galveston Naval Museum. This museum was established in the 1970s, and it consists of two World War II vessels. So we have the USS Stewart and the USS Kavala. The Stewart is a carrier, and the Kavala is a submarine. This particular island, it has its own fair share of history, in that after the 1900 storm, a lot of the bodies washed up on the shores of this island. And this was where the immigration station had its hospital at that time as well. So you have a lot of paranormal activity and ghostly stories that get shared all the time about those particular things. People seeing, apparitions wandering along the water on the sides. But when you have two World War II vessels that both saw battle during World War II, to add to that, you get a lot more paranormal activity and hauntings, apparitions, things of that nature. Here on the Stewart, which is where we currently are, at one time there was a kamikaze plane that hit the vessel while it was out to sea. And when that happened, there was a gentleman who was out on the deck and he was decapitated. Then that plane careened into the side of the ship and it damaged the engine room and injured 30 men in the process. There are a lot of stories of apparitions being seen in the vessel itself. There is a story of a gentleman who runs the top deck. Apparently, while he was in service to the Navy, he was claustrophobic and also did not like being out to sea. So he would break out of the brig and he would run the top deck. They say he still does that now in his afterlife. There's a story of two boys who were cleaning their weapons below deck, and one of them was horsing around and accidentally shot the other, and his friend died. And they tried to save his life here in the wardroom where we currently are. This was where they would perform surgery operations here on this table. And the light above the table oftentimes turns itself off and on. We've had tours that have come through back to back where it's been on at one time, and then on another tour it would be off. And then during a tour just a couple of weeks ago, we had a situation where the light came on while the group was in here. Oftentimes, tour guides and people that tour the facilities in general will smell hospital smells, disinfectant, medical grade cleaners, things like that in this particular location. My tour guide, Tim, he has experience seeing apparitions standing just beyond that door. And it's a very common practice for these types of things to happen. Now, this particular vessel has all of these types of stories attached to it, that's true, but over on the Kavala, they have experiences as well. So you'll have the sensation of having cell phones sitting on one of the bunks, and literally it'll drop 5-10% in charge just sitting there on its own unprovoked. A lot of times you'll hear music being played in places where there shouldn't be any music playing. You'll hear people talking where there are no people to be talking. And just this huge sense of being in a space that is occupied. Specifically over in the Kavala, you'll experience that where they have all of their equipment for communications. it's almost as if some people are still trying to communicate from the other side.
Hello, my name is Reese Young, and I am an employee for the Galveston Naval Museum. I have been a member here for about a year, almost a half. And when we first started doing paranormal tours the year before we invited Spooky Galveston, we just did it out of fun. My other teammate and I, they contacted us to ask about doing the tours. And so from there, we came together, made a nice business plan, and they started taking over what we didn't have the staff to actually do ourselves. So it gave us a really cool opportunity. And as I started talking with them more, I always told them I never really believed in the paranormal. I said, I'm too ADHD, there's too many things, I'm completely inattentive, it goes all over the place. I said, I can guarantee you they're probably more like, that woman never sees anything we do. So I ended up having situations shortly after, because Jen did warn me. She goes, you'll end up where they'll prove you things are going to happen. And the first one started in the infirmary. I sleep in the back room where we keep a lot of our archives during sleepovers. We have scouts and everything that come in. And the first night I was sleeping, I had turned off all the lights and unplugged as much as I could. And there are two white flashing little orbs over the desk. That used to be the desk for the ship's doctor. And at first I was always thinking, okay, well, it's got to be something coming off of the monitor. You know, there has to be something causing this light. Maybe there's one of our white bags. And the next morning when I got up, it ended up, the monitor was unplugged. There was no computer system. There was nothing there to cause those little white orbs that I kept seeing floating over the desk. The second thing happened actually just last weekend during another scout sleepover. And typically I will set 2 alarm clocks, one for 6:30 so I can go out and peek out on everybody, and then 7 to go out and do the official waking. And this morning, because my group was a bunch of little 6-year-old kids, I didn't feel the need to wake up at 6:30, just grab them at 7. And all of a sudden the light and once again, the doctor's office just automatically clipped on. And it was one of our big, heavy lights that you have to turn the knob, the dial. And it came on right at the time my alarm would usually go off. So I've come to think that we do have spirits. They are kind of here. They, they know you work hard for the place, they're going to help you maintain it. So I guess I lucked out and ended up getting some great spooky spirits. But what I always believed really was haunting about this place is if you talk to any war vets or any troop men that served active, they will tell you they always leave the part of themselves in the battle. And what I feel gets played throughout here is that part of them that never returned home. You can talk to all of your Pearl Harbor, your Vietnams, and they always say there's something of them left behind. And that is why so many things play out automatically. I don't know if Jen told you about the 2 young officers. One of them accidentally shot his friend in this room. Well, when we first started doing our spooky tours in here, the light started flipping off and on, and it hadn't worked the entire time I had been here. And suddenly it is instantly getting power and generating back up. Just the normal things like that. The Kabbalah is our more active haunting. We always call this one passive and the Kabbalah to be a more active. The men in there, if you're talking about submariners versus men who served on the ship, the submariners knew they had a less likely chance of survival. And in order to serve on a submarine, you had to have a particular sense of humor and be a particular type of person. And we have bunks in there that are haunted, even though they had to practice what was hot bunking. The one where we have the George officer, which is the youngest enlisted officer in training, people kept getting poked. They would have their batteries drained from their phone. As you start walking into the engine room, we tried doing some of our own little paranormal readings for the first, and staff members have been grabbed. They've been poked. We've had tours that we've gone through where a lady swore she could hear her name being called by her husband. And when she turned around, there was no one behind her, and her husband was all the way at the front. So it calls to people. We're not sure why or who they choose to interact with. We find that some staff they tend to like more than others. We had our ship superintendent at one point in time almost got shoved off the vessel when he was young. So we figured they really felt like playing with him. And the Kavala, it saw a lot more action in the way of fighting than the Stuart did. The Stuart was more of a rescue vessel. It was an escort. It took a lot of firepower on, but it was used more for fire and fire brigades mostly. And then eventually at the end of the war, when they had D-Day, she ended up moving over into the Pacific, where you heard some of the other stories from Jen. But the one that was the more active hunter was always the Kavala. And that's one that when you think of how much you have to serve, when you're trying to quickly outmaneuver a torpedo or something, that is definitely going to stay in you. You know, Maya Angelou always commented that she believed one day we'll be able to measure the power of words. And if you think of all the words and the commands and the emotions that go into that place, it's going to be haunted. And that's not even mentioning the ground. Do you know anything about the island itself? So this island back in the 1800s did not exist. It was just a small little strip of marshland. And by the time the 1900s started coming around the hurricane, it ended up being a catch-all for bodies. So we have some people who have actually come to visit here, and they say they keep seeing Victorian-style people walking around. As it moved on, you ended up into this island was also used for a quarantine station. Yellow fever, they had 9 bouts going up and down the coast. And the comment was, if you stayed in Galveston during one of their bouts of yellow fever, you would die like sheep. So the quarantine stations had very much like they did during COVID, where they would go out in their boats and check the vessels for yellow fever. If it had yellow fever, they were forced to stay out into harbor until it was cleared, which often meant most of the time the people had passed away. So it was a very difficult time, but this island was used for a lot of things, and it was built up over the years to become what it was. And it changed and evolved, but it was part of the 1900 hurricane. So there was a lot of people that floated up on the shore that they ended up having to pull out at one point in time.